Okay, so we just finished talking about abstraction. Okay, so this is a typical what's called a flat table for a database. Okay, and as opposed to what's called a relational database. A database can be viewed as a flat table of rows and columns. The most common form of table is that in which column corresponds to an attribute and a row represents a specific data object. So the rows are the objects or the cases, and the columns are the variables. And that's almost always how we'll see it. Here's what's called a transaction database. Transaction database is a special type of table with two columns. So there's only two columns. The transaction identifier, transaction ID, and a set of items contained in the transaction as shown here. Similar to a transaction database, similar to this, is what's called a sequential transaction database. It contains the record identifier and a list of sets of items as shown below. Each set of items has a timestamp associated with it. The list therefore signifies a temporal order between the sets of items. So here we have T1, time 2, T1, T3, and so on. Besides the commonly used flat tables, there are other forms of data sets where there is some structure among data objects. A sequence data set describes a sequence among individual objects. For instance, a sequence may represent the results of medical tests over a time period. Over a time period for monitoring development of a disease in a patient. So we have the measurements over time. A sequence that represents measurement results recorded over a period of time is also known as a time series. A typical example of a time series is a sequence of audio signals. So music certainly has to be a time series. You can't mix up the order of the tones and call it the same music. Spatial data that represents positions. So you might have spatial data might show the x, y, and z coordinates. So that of something. The positions, areas, etc. of data objects are also sequence data sets. A typical example of spatial data is a digital image. A value in the sequence represents, for example, the color value of a pixel at a specific x and y coordinate position. So a picture, again, is spatial in the sense that, and sequential in the sense that if you change the order of the pixels, you certainly don't get the same picture again. Data objects may have a unique identifier. Data mining that relates output patterns to data object identifiers is known as discovery with signatures. Otherwise, it is known as discovery without signatures. Whether to have signatures in the discovery depends on the business need and the law. Okay, let's stop.